Hello folks, and welcome back to another video. So recently this guy turned 4. I realized that I've never really done like a Merlin's story so far type video, and I've been wanting to do it for a while, so I thought what better occasion than his 4th birthday. I have so much footage from when he was a baby and from when he was a yearling that I haven't really shown, so I thought that it would be fun. And as I was, like, the video is edited, I'm recording this after the fact, and as I was putting all the clips together, downloading them from iCloud, I realized that there's just no way that I'm going to fit 4 years worth of footage of Merlin into a single 20-25 minute video. I've decided to make 2 videos, and the first one, which is this one, is going to kind of cover the time from his birth until just after his OCD surgery. The second video will kind of cover his undersaddle prep and undersaddle journey so far, so from about the time of 2.5 to 4. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy, particularly the baby footage, because I got a lot of footage from my coach that I had seen but didn't have like my own copies of, and I had so much fun editing it and reminiscing on how cute he was when he was a baby and how big he grew so quickly. So Merlin was born in the early hours of the morning on June 7th, 2019. I'm super lucky that my coach filmed his birth, so I have the exact moment that he came into this world. From what I've heard, it was quite an easy delivery for his gorgeous mummy, but he was very big, so she was quite sore for a few days afterwards. He stood up relatively quickly and all seemed normal, but unfortunately, he actually ended up developing a scrotal hernia, so he ended up spending much of the first couple of weeks of his life in hospital, the same place that he went for his OCD surgery. So that obnoxious laugh that you just heard in the background was me, and these videos are actually from the first day that I met Merlin. It was shortly after he got back from hospital. This was, I believe it was June 22nd, and I know that it's going to be cheesy and cliche for me to say this, but I immediately fell in love with him. He was just like, despite everything he had been through, he was so goofy, adorably clumsy, but still feisty and full of life and just very silly and inquisitive. Like, he had the best personality and attitude and just a never-ending amount of energy and this zest for life that was infectious. So these adorable clips are ones that my coach recently sent me that I had seen before but didn't have copies of. So this is Merlin's first time playing around outside, and oh my goodness, he was just so cute, and his mummy is she's just such an incredible mare. And as I record this, she's actually days away from giving birth to a little brother or sister for Merlin, and I'm so excited to meet that baby. So here's more time of him outside. He's a little bit older here, maybe a month old. So this is his first time being introduced to the other foal that was born the same year, and this clip always makes me laugh because he gets exuberant, boop, kicks his mummy, they go around, and then she disciplines him. Oh, such a good mom. And because I know some people are probably going to ask, his mom's name is Roxanne. She's a registered Oldenburg, but everybody just calls her Mama Bear. So this is Merlin, Mama Bear, Stella, who was the mom of the other foal, and Pearl, the other foal, their first time all outside in their little field together. Merlin was very, very exuberant, and he kept trying to make friends with Pearl, but Stella was a very protective mom, so it took a couple of weeks for everybody to kind of all be in sync together and happy with their cohabitation. I think straight from the time that he was born, there's Pearl. Straight from the time that he was born, Merlin was very exuberant and had lots of energy, and it could be a lot. So like, honestly, oh my god, these clips make me laugh. And something that always blows my mind about particularly warm blood babies is how quickly they grow. So you saw the clips earlier of how small he was when he was born, and these clips here, he's maybe a month and a half, 2 months old, and he's like double the size that he was when he was born. This is such a cute clip. Oh, Stella. She looks at me all proudly like, look, I protected my baby. And this is the very first clip I have of Merlin following me around like a dog. Such a cutie. And at this point, I was spending as much time with him as I could because I just loved him and I knew that he would be for sale eventually. Now here he was probably 3 or 4 months old, a couple of months before being weaned. And these are clips that would have been used in sale videos, stills, stuff like that. And as you can see, very pretty, strapping young foal. Flash forward a few months, both boys are now weaned and they are being introduced to their adopted adoptive grandmother, Mocha, aka Nana, for the first time, and she's very quick to establish that she is the boss and won't take any crap from them. They're like, oh my god, what is this thing? Whenever I watch this clip, it always puts me in stitches, because then she goes over to them as if to say, what's going on, and Merlin's like, hell no, I'm out of here, bye-bye. And this introduction got all of the horses on the farm going, and it's a video that I love it. Now this is a clip that I actually took one day over the winter of, this was early 2020. I was doing chores and the boys were just running around being fools, so I took a clip, and it's one of the only full clips of Merlin that I have that I actually took, and he's such a clumsy boy. So yeah, over that first winter he just chilled and relaxed being a young horse, and then we go into May. So I actually have a video on my channel about the story of how Merlin became mine. I published it sometime in 2022, so I'll put that in the cards here. But basically I messaged my coach one day inquiring about the price of board, because I was potentially thinking about getting a horse within the next year or two, and I inquired about the babies just on the off chance, because Merlin, I always loved him and I knew that he was for sale. And it just so happened that when I messaged her, she was actually out in the field with the two babies trying to get some video footage, particularly trot footage of Merlin, for a woman who was interested in buying him, who was going to be making a decision that night. And she basically said, if you want him, you gotta make a decision, because he'll likely be sold. And as you can see from these clips, I made a decision. 3 hours later, I was driving out to the barn and greeting my new horse. I'll always be super happy and grateful to have this clip as, me greeting him for the first time. I hadn't seen him in a couple of months because I wasn't allowed out. Like, no one was allowed out to the farm for, I want to say, between March and May of 2020 because of COVID. Like, it was like provincial rules. So this was the first time that I had been out to the farm in a couple of months. I had been very low mentally, and this buying him was the thing that saved me, to be honest. I was so low and he just brought me right back up. So what ensued over the next few months was me getting to know him, him getting to know me as his person. Lots of firsts. First fly mask here. He didn't really care. Lots of work in the arena, doing little bits of groundwork. After about a month, he started to greet me every time I went to the paddock. We started working on things like fly spray, and I wasn't using positive reinforcement at this point, but I was trying to introduce things in a way that was very slow, very gentle, and the positive reinforcement stuff would come later. He was always a very curious horse, and I never wanted to discourage that. So whenever we were doing anything in the arena and anything weird was going on, I would encourage him to investigate rather than to be scared. And this was the case here. There were horses turned out next to the arena, and he went to say hi, and I encouraged it, and they were so sweet and gentle with him. So as a yearling, I did bring him into the arena quite a bit, just doing lots of in-hand stuff, letting him loose, letting him have a play, and just encouraging him to investigate his environment and encourage that natural bravery that he had. Did lots of stuff at the mounting block, lots of kind of what people call desensitization, like stepping up on a step. About midsummer, Pearl was actually sold, and Mocha, the mini, had a baby, so Merlin needed a new pasture buddy, and we were so lucky to have Zendero, who was this incredible, at the time I think he was 28-year-old appendix gelding, who was such an incredible kind of role model and grandpa for Merlin to have. This is the video of them meeting for the first time, and Daryl was kind of quick to put him in his place to make sure that he knew that he was the boss, but they were very quick friends and such a sweet pair, despite what this clip shows. A few weeks after Merlin and Darrow became friends, Merlin's breeder actually bought an Irish sport horse mare named Ivy as kind of a project, and we had the idea to put her in with Merlin and Darrow. At this point, Merlin was just over a year old, and even though he was ungelded, wasn't yet showing any steadiness at all, so we threw her in with them, and she was, again, such a wonderful presence for him. And over the summer, the three of them just blossomed into this beautiful little unconventional family, and it was the cutest thing in the world. I loved just going out and spending time with them. Ivy was only 8 or 9, so she was quite often content to indulge Merlin in his wish to play, but was also quick and not afraid to put him in his place when he got a little bit too rambunctious for her liking. All throughout this time, I was actually a working student at the farm, so I was finishing up my master's thesis, but it was kind of on pause because of COVID, so I had a lot of time to spend, and I was really lucky enough to be able to spend a lot of time that first summer getting to know Merlin and building our relationship and doing silly, funky things like making fun of him, me putting bell boots on him for the first time, sitting a saddle on his back, and giggling at the fact that he was more concerned about trying to eat the billets on the opposite side of the saddle than he was about the fact that there was something on his back. We also went on some confidence building walks into the big back field together, so this was me leading him out into the big 30-acre hayfield for the first time on his own, and he was so good. We stayed really near the gate, but it was just all about increasing his confidence away from friends and encouraging him to turn to me for guidance or reassurance when he was feeling unsure. And as you can see, he's always been a mouthy boy. Ivy was sold in September of 2020, so Merlin and Darrow were actually put in the back group, which included Stella, who was the mom of Pearl and Merlin's mom. And he remains in this group to this day. Now, granted, at this point there was about 10 of them, and now there's only 5 or 6. It kind of fluctuates depending on if someone's going for breeding, or sometimes the numbers move around a little bit. As you can see, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There was a lot of confusion about the fact that there was this annoying young man in with the group, but things very quickly settled down, and the blessing for Merlin was the fact that he had Darrow that he knew, and even though they were in with a very big group over the coming months, they still stuck together. This is a clip of Merlin. Merlin's group had gone out into the field. I had opened the gate and they were still together, and Merlin waited, and it was just the cutest thing in the world. Now, shortly after he was introduced into the big herd, Merlin really started, I think, realizing that I was his person and that he had someone for him, because he just started refusing to leave me alone despite the 30-acre field. He would come whenever he was called. Example here. You can see a big difference now between him and his mom. He's basically her height, which is just insane. To put it into perspective, most of these clips were taken on different days within the same 3-week period, and whenever he would see me coming or hear his name, I would call Bubby, and he would just look up and come trotting towards me. Quite often, there's Darrow in the background, quite often bringing the whole herd with him. Oh, I love you so much.
Hi, Safi. Oh, good girl, Mama. You tell him what to do and where to go. Yes, you're the boss.
And I remember this particular day, I want to say it was late October 2020, very vividly, because it felt like this day where our partnership was just really solidified. Like, I felt, not for the first time, but I felt like this was something good. You know, I fall deeply in love with every single horse that I work with, and when I stop working with them, it's always really hard. And this was around the time that I started to realize that, oh wait, like, this horse is mine. He is my ride or die, and we're going to be together for a long time. I'm leaving this clip in because it's Merlin and Safi and Lacey, who was an Arabian rescue mare who was sadly put down last fall. They're just so happy, and like, Safi has always been really strong support for Merlin since he got moved in with the herd, and it just seeing their size difference now compared to, you know, they were relatively even in height at this time, it just makes me smile. So something that I haven't actually delved into yet, we're now in terms of clips, we're in November, but back in July of 2020, I actually noticed some lumps almost in his hocks and ended up having the vet out to do some x-rays, and it turned out that he had OCD chips. Now, with consultation with my vet, we decided that it wasn't something that needed immediate action because he wasn't, it's not like he was a ridden horse in work. He was a young horse out in the field, and it could wait so that I could save up. So over the winter, we actually spent a lot of time in the arena so that he could move, and we just played around.
Here, what's down here? What's down here? Here. What are these? You'll be jumping those in a few years. No, no. Merlin, no.
And between the ages of like 1.5 and 2, he really blossomed into this animal that just all of a sudden, it was like overnight, he just looked like a horse. Like he was still a baby and still looked babyish, but now he was the size of his mother and was much more grown up. And it was quite emotional for me because I realized very quickly that it wouldn't feel like very long until I was riding him because he was growing up so quickly. And I really wanted to cherish his time as a baby, so I made sure to spend as much time just hanging out with him and being together as we did in the arena doing some groundwork, like in these clips from late December 2020. I couldn't go home to spend Christmas with my family in 2020 because of the pandemic, so I spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day out at the barn with my beautiful boy, and he made me feel a lot less homesick. So then we got into 2021, and as he got nearer to the age of 2, I started doing a little bit more groundwork with him, like you see here, getting him to walk away from me on the lead rope as a way to eventually prepare him for lunging. And he was such a good boy, but in February something shifted, his hormones set in, and he started acting a lot more steady, and he was just a lot more to handle. So I was reverting back to the things that I had been taught, the methods of, not punishment, but the methods of dealing with certain behaviors that I had been taught, and it was making me feel deeply uncomfortable because I felt like I was shifting the kind of trust that I had worked so hard to build. And I just really didn't like it, so I started looking into alternative methods of training in, I want to say February, but it was a while before I implemented them because I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right. I discovered that Merlin and snow are two things that go together very well, and some of my favorite pictures and videos of him ever are from this first winter of him just playing in the snow and having the best time. And then this session in February happened where he was very full of himself, lots of energy, and it was a session that made me want something different, and the session that made me finally turn to positive reinforcement. He kept biting, he kept getting into my space, and all the methods that I had been taught to use, including increasing pressure, using force if need be, yelling, lead shanks, like all of those things that we were encouraged to use as young equestrians weren't working. If anything, they were making the behavior worse. And just to put it bluntly, they were making me feel really uncomfortable and like I was ruining my relationship with my horse. And I'm not proud of these clips, and it's taking me a lot to include them, but I feel like it's important to show how Merlin encouraged me to improve my horsemanship and how much he taught me, because so much of his journey as a horse is entwined with my journey as a horsewoman and as a person in general. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's the truth. Around this time, Merlin also discovered a love of sticks. I have so many clips from around this time of him just picking up sticks, playing with them over and over again. Here he was wanting to get Savvy to play with them, and she was not interested. And then in early March, I started working on positive reinforcement with him, starting with boundaries or manners and quickly moving on to things like backing up, target training, etc. And I actually have a much more detailed video about why I switched to positive reinforcement, and I include a lot of these clips in more detail, so I'll have that linked in the description and in the cards here if you're interested in seeing more. It was actually, I think, the second video that I ever uploaded to this channel. This is a clip from the day that I first started target training with him, and he, like many horses, he caught on super quickly. It's a really versatile skill for them to have. And some more from when he was learning to back up, and you can see a big difference in the gentleness of these clips versus the more abrasive way that I was previously teaching him to try to back up. In March of 2021, while we were starting our positive reinforcement journey, I was still doing a lot of other things with him while also just spending time. These clips here, despite it being annoyingly out of focus, are some ones that just make me smile because despite how hormonal he was still the sweetest boy. Here is him going over his first quote-unquote jump. As you can see, he didn't really care. And sometimes the mouthiness worked to my advantage because this was his maybe second time wearing a bridle, and I've never had an easier time putting a bit in a horse's mouth. But shortly after that, I actually ended up getting the call for him to go to his surgery, a more detailed video of which is actually available on my channel. I will link it here. So he was on stall rest for, I want to say, about a month, and then it was a very slow process of reintegrating him back into a turnout schedule on smaller lots and then gradually bigger until he was out with his herd again full time. In the days after his surgery, he was very tired, and I spent a lot of time just hanging out in his stall with him because it was a very stressful thing for him to go through, to go from being out 24/7 to being inside away from other horses. We did lots of hand grazing, and I just wanted to keep things as normal for him as possible. And eventually, towards the end of May in 2021, he was able to go outside during the day in a very small pen. This is the very first moment after I let him loose, and we actually ended up restricting the pen a little bit more because I just made it too big and he could move too much. And though he was initially very excited when I put him out, it didn't last very long, and he actually ended up being a very sensible boy for return to turnout, to the point where I was able to start doing a tiny bit of work with him. So this is him on the long lines for the very first time. I didn't really care about direction, it was more about forward momentum. I had kind of stood behind him with them before, but nothing major. This whole session lasted maybe 3 minutes, and he was such a good boy. Rehab is also a great time to work on some positive reinforcement skills, so I introduced the target stick, and he took to it like a duck. I don't know what, like a fish out, duck to water, duck out of, I don't know what the phrase is, but you know what I mean. He was such a good boy and understood it right away. And sometimes, you know, you have to listen to your horse even if what your horse is telling you goes against what the vet has suggested. So we actually ended up putting him in a slightly bigger turnout space with other horses about 2 to 3 weeks sooner than we were supposed to. But he was just so unhappy in the little pen by himself after a couple of weeks alone. He was rearing and was just causing potential damage to his joints that I had just spent a lot of money trying to get fixed. So we put him out in that field, and then I gradually started letting him out for a little bit of grass. And by the beginning of July of 2021, he was able to roam freely between the smaller fields that Eve is actually in now and a small paddock with a shelter. And he was just so happy. He wasn't quite able to go out with his regular herd, but he was much happier, and he was in a space where we could start doing a little bit of playing around in the arena and getting back to some semblance of normalcy. So that is the first half of Merlin's story so far. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want to see more, check out some of my other videos. And if you enjoy them, consider hitting the subscribe button. I'm hoping that my next video will be part 2, but I have so much riding footage that it might take me a bit longer to put together, so we will see. But until next time, whatever that may be, I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. Don't forget to give your horse or pony a hug or a kiss the next time you see them, and I will see you next time. Bye!